I still remember the way the air smelled that summer, warm asphalt after rain, a little bit of salt from the ocean if the wind blew right. It was 1996, and everything in my life felt half-built, half-lost. I was 21, working at a gas station in Wilmington, North Carolina, saving money I never seemed to keep. I didn't have much going for me back then. An old Ford pickup, a small apartment above a laundromat, and a guitar with 2 missing strings. I used to tell myself I was going to leave town one day, maybe go up to Nashville, maybe even LA, but deep down I knew I probably wouldn't. And then she walked in. It was a Tuesday in June, hot enough to make the air shimmer. I was wiping oil off the counter when I heard the bell over the door. She walked in wearing a yellow sundress, hair pulled up in one of those messy 90s clips, sunglasses perched on her head. I remember thinking she looked like a song I hadn't written yet. "Hey," she said, smiling. "You guys do tire pressure checks here?" Her voice was soft but confident, the kind that made you want to keep listening. "Yeah," I said, tossing the rag aside. "You just pull up by the second pump." She nodded, thanked me, and walked back out. I tried not to stare, but I did. Her car, a faded blue Honda Civic, rolled up, and I knelt to check her tires. She crouched beside me, her shadow falling across my hands. "Do you work here all day?" she asked. "Most days," I said. "Pays the bills." She smiled again. That small, crooked kind of smile people have when they're both shy and curious. "I'm Emily," she said. "Jake," I replied. And that was it. The start of something I didn't even know was starting. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in a crush kind of way, it was quieter than that, like her voice had left an echo somewhere in me. A few days later, she came by again, said her wipers weren't working right. Then the week after that, her headlights. I knew what she was doing, and she knew I knew, but neither of us said anything. We started talking more. About music, movies, her college classes. She was studying art at UNC Wilmington. She said she wanted to be a teacher, but sometimes she talked like she wanted to run away from everything. Same as me. One night, I drove her home after her car broke down outside the station. She lived in a small house near the coast, her room filled with sketchbooks and old cassette tapes. When I turned to leave, she said, "Jake, do you ever feel like you're supposed to be somewhere else, but you don't know where?" I looked at her, and for a second, I felt like maybe that was where I was supposed to be. I didn't go home right away that night. I sat in my truck outside her house, engine idling low, headlights off, trying to figure out why I felt like I just stepped off a cliff. There wasn't anything big that happened. No kiss, no confession. But something about the way she'd looked at me, like she'd seen straight through all the noise in my head, had shaken me up more than I wanted to admit. I kept hearing her voice on repeat. "Do you ever feel like you're supposed to be somewhere else, but you don't know where?" Yeah, I did. The next few weeks went by like chapters in a book I didn't want to end. Emily would stop by the station after class, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just to talk. She'd sit on the curb while I worked, sketching in a little notebook she carried everywhere. One evening, she handed me one of those sketches. It was of me, head down, wiping my hands on a rag, the sunlight bouncing off the windshield behind me. "You made me look better than I do in real life," I said, half smiling. She shrugged. "I drew how you looked when you weren't trying to be seen." That line stuck with me for days. By mid-July, we started driving out to the beach after my shifts ended. Sometimes we didn't even talk. I'd bring my guitar, she'd bring her sketchbook, and we'd just sit there listening to the waves and the far-off hum of the highway. She'd tell me stories about growing up in Raleigh, about how her mom wanted her to marry someone safe, and how her dad never said much of anything. She said she wanted to see more of the world but was scared she'd end up like everyone else. Stuck, just older. I told her about my brother, who joined the army right after high school, and about my mom, who still called twice a week to ask when I'd do something real with my life. Emily laughed. "What's more real than being here?" And somehow I couldn't argue with that. One night, near the end of July, she invited me over to her place again. We sat on the porch drinking cheap wine from mismatched mugs, the kind of stuff that burned going down. Her cassette player was playing Counting Crows, the tape warbling a little because it had been played too many times. At some point, she leaned her head on my shoulder. I remember her hair smelled like salt and coconut, I wish this summer would never end. She whispered that I looked at her. But she didn't look back. Maybe she already knew what I was thinking. That was the first night we kissed. It wasn't some movie moment. No fireworks, no music swelling in the background. Just her hand brushing mine, a slow turn, and the kind of kiss that felt like a promise neither of us was ready to make. After that, we were inseparable. We'd drive around with no destination, singing along to whatever was on the radio. Sometimes she'd take photos on one of those disposable cameras, laughing when the flash went off too bright. Other times we'd just lie on the hood of my truck, watching planes blink across the sky. It felt like the world had finally gone quiet enough for me to hear myself think. She started calling me Dreamer Boy, said I always looked like I was halfway between staying and running. And maybe she was right. But like all good things, something in the air started to shift. By August, she was quieter. I'd ask what was wrong, and she'd smile and say, "Nothing, just tired." But her eyes would look somewhere else, like she was already halfway gone. One night, I found her sitting alone on the beach, knees pulled to her chest. She didn't notice me at first. When I sat beside her, she didn't turn her head. "I got into a program," she said finally, "in Chicago, for art." I didn't say anything at first. I just watched the tide roll in, dragging foam over our feet. That's amazing," I said. It came out quieter than I meant it to. She nodded, eyes fixed on the water. "I leave in September." I swallowed hard. "And what about?" She cut me off. "I don't know, Jake. I really don't." That night was the first time we didn't hold hands on the way back. I dropped her off, and she lingered by the door, wanting to say something but not finding the words. I watched her silhouette disappear behind the screen door, then sat in my truck until dawn, engine off, everything still. In that silence, I realized something I'd never said out loud. I loved her, and I was going to lose her. September came faster than I thought it would. The air shifted first. Those humid nights turned cooler, softer, like the world was trying to tell me something was ending. The gas station was quieter, too. Summer tourists gone, just locals filling up before work. I'd still catch myself looking up every time I heard the bell over the door, half hoping it was her. Sometimes it was. Most times it wasn't. Emily was packing most evenings when I came by. Boxes stacked against her wall, sketchbooks tied with string, little notes stuck between pages like reminders of who she used to be. We didn't talk about Chicago much. I think we were both pretending she wasn't really leaving, that maybe something would change. But pretending only works until it doesn't. One evening, about a week before she was set to go, I stopped by her house unannounced. Her mom answered the door, smiling politely like she was trying to remember who I was. "Emily's upstairs," she said. "You can go up if you want." I found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by half-open boxes and that same old cassette player humming quietly beside her. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You look like someone who's about to give a speech." "Maybe I am," I said. I took a breath. My hands wouldn't stay still. "Don't go," I blurted. "Or at least, don't go yet." She just stared at me for a moment, eyes soft, tired. "Jake," she started, then stopped. "I have to. This is my chance to actually do something." "You're already doing something," I said. "You make people feel something. You made me feel something." She smiled, that small, sad kind of smile that means goodbye. "You don't get it," she whispered. "If I stay, I'll never leave. And if I never leave, I'll always wonder what could have been." I didn't know how to argue with that, so I didn't. The night before she left, she asked me to take her to the beach one last time. We drove with the windows down, her hair whipping around, that old Counting Crows tape playing again, the same song we'd first kissed to. When we got there, the beach was empty. The moonlight made everything silver, almost unreal. She walked ahead of me, shoes in her hand, feet sinking into the sand. I followed, close enough to hear her breathing, far enough not to interrupt it. When she turned, her eyes were shining with tears. "I'm scared," she said. "Of what?" "Of going, of staying, of losing you." I wanted to tell her she wouldn't, that I'd wait, that distance didn't mean forever. But the words got stuck somewhere behind my ribs. Because I think we both knew, Love wasn't always enough to keep two people in the same place. We stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Then she reached up, kissed me, slow, deep, like she wanted to memorize it, and whispered, "Promise me something." "What?" "Don't stop dreaming, even if I'm not part of it." I didn't answer. I just held her until the waves crept up to our knees and the horizon started to pale. She left the next morning that I didn't go to the airport. Couldn't. I told myself it'd be easier that way. But when I got off work and saw her car gone from the driveway, something in my chest just went quiet. The first week without her felt like standing still while the rest of the world moved on. I checked the mailbox, hoping for a letter that didn't come. Every song on the radio sounded like her voice. Every night I'd drive down to the beach, sit in the same spot where she'd kissed me goodbye, and just listen. Sometimes I'd talk to her like she could still hear me that I told her about the customers at the station. About how the coffee machine finally broke. About the rain that wouldn't stop. It sounds pathetic, I know. But it was the only way to keep her real. Then one day, about 3 weeks later, a letter finally came. The handwriting was hers, messy, tilted, and when I opened it, a small Polaroid slipped out. It was a picture of a city street, gray skies, her reflection faintly visible in a window. Her note was short. "Hey dreamer boy, Chicago's big, cold too. But I'm okay. I miss the ocean. I miss you. Don't forget to write. E." I didn't know whether to smile or break, so I did both. For a while we wrote each other every week. Her letters were full of stories about art classes, new friends, coffee shops that stayed open late. Mine were about the small things, the station, the beach, how the sky turned orange before the storms rolled in. But slowly the letters came less often. Once a week turned into once a month. Then 2 months. Then nothing. I tried to tell myself she was just busy, that she'd call. But deep down I knew. The world she'd found was bigger than the one we'd built, and maybe that was the point. It was late November when I heard from her again. Only this time it wasn't her handwriting on the envelope. It was her mother's. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. "Jake, I thought you should know. There was an accident outside Chicago last week. Car ran a red light. Emily didn't make it. I found your letters in her desk. She kept everyone. Thank you for being part of her story." I don't remember much after that. Just the sound of the rain hitting the roof of the station, the paper crumpled in my fist, the world spinning like it didn't care. I still have that Polaroid. It's faded now, edges curling, but I keep it in my wallet. Some nights, when the air smells like salt and asphalt again, I take it out and look at it under the streetlight. I think about how maybe she was right. Maybe we were supposed to be somewhere else, but for one small summer we found each other anyway. And maybe that's enough. It's been almost 8 years since that summer. But sometimes I still catch myself driving down to the coast just to sit and listen to the ocean. Wilmington's changed. More traffic lights, new coffee shops where the old diner used to be, the gas station painted over and turned into a car wash. But some things never change. The air still smells like salt and gasoline, and the gulls still circle the same cracked pier, and every time I'm there, I swear I can still see her. That flash of yellow sundress in the corner of my mind, hair twisted up in the wind, laughing about nothing. It's funny how memory works, how it keeps things alive long after they're gone. After Emily's mom sent that letter, I didn't leave the apartment for a week. Didn't eat much. Didn't sleep at all. The days blurred into each other until I stopped trying to count them. When I finally went back to work, people didn't ask questions. They just nodded at me quietly, the way people do when they don't know how to make things better. At night, I'd walk the beach with her last letter in my pocket, the ink smudged from where I'd held it too long. I think part of me was waiting for her to show up again. Like maybe the universe had made a mistake, and she'd come walking out of the tide, hair wet, barefoot, saying it was all a dream, but she never did. A few months later, I packed up what little I had and left town. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't stand the silence anymore. Every street corner, every song on the radio, every damn sunset looked like her. I drove north until I hit Virginia, then kept going. Picked up work wherever I could. Gas stations, construction, delivering mail. Never long enough to settle, never far enough to forget. Some nights I'd play my old guitar in cheap motel rooms, the same songs I used to play for her. I told myself I was chasing something, but looking back, I think I was just running from the ghosts. In 2003, I ended up in a small town outside Nashville. Rented a one-bedroom apartment above a diner that played old country songs through busted speakers. Started playing open mics at night, singing the stories I didn't know how else to tell. People seemed to like them. Said I had heart. I never told them who the songs were about. Sometimes, when the crowd went quiet, I'd close my eyes and almost hear her voice again. Soft, steady, saying, "Don't stop dreaming," and for a while, that was enough. I never married. Came close once. A girl named Lila. Met her at the diner where I played on Fridays. She was sweet, steady, the kind of person who made life feel simple. But she deserved someone whole, and I was still missing pieces. She knew it too. One night, she found that Polaroid in my wallet. Didn't say anything for a long time. Then she smiled, kissed my cheek and said, "Whoever she was, she must have loved you a lot." I didn't correct her. I couldn't. Because she was right and wrong all at once. The years kept rolling by, faster than I expected. Mom passed away in 2010. My brother came back from overseas with a limp and a quietness in his eyes that reminded me too much of my own. I started teaching guitar at a small music store downtown, helping kids who wanted to play Nirvana and Pearl Jam, even though the world had moved on to something else. One day, this kid, 16 maybe, asked if I'd ever been in love. That I laughed, said, "Once." He grinned. "What happened?" I looked at him for a long time before saying, "Summer ended." He didn't understand, but he nodded anyway, like he could feel what I meant. Every August, I go back to Wilmington. It's something I've done for years now. I drive down the same highway, park near the beach, and walk until I find the spot where we used to sit. Right by the old lifeguard tower, half buried in sand. The ocean doesn't care about time. Keeps breathing in and out. Same as it always did. I bring flowers sometimes. Not because I think she'd want them, because I don't know what else to do with the ache. And when the sun starts to fade, I take out that Polaroid and hold it up to the light. It's almost blank now, colors faded, her reflection barely visible. But if I tilt it just right, I can still see her smile, soft and blurred, like she's still there, halfway between staying and running. Last year, I found one of her old letters while cleaning out a box. Must have missed it back then. It was short, barely a paragraph, but I swear it felt like she was talking to me across all that time. "Jake, if you ever wonder whether you mattered, you did. You were the first person who made me feel seen. Love, E." I sat there on the floor for an hour, the paper trembling in my hands, wondering what she'd think if she saw me now, older, quieter, still carrying her in my chest like a song I never finished writing. People say time heals everything. Maybe it does for some, but not for the kind of love that leaves fingerprints on your soul. That kind stays quiet, patient, waiting for the right kind of silence to rise again. Some nights, I still dream about her. About that beach, that summer, the way the light turned gold just before it went dark. In the dream, she's always walking ahead of me, turning back with that same small smile. And when I wake up, I swear for half a second, I can still smell salt in the air. I've come to understand something about love. It doesn't always end with goodbye. Sometimes it just fades, slowly, like sunlight slipping off the ocean. And maybe that's what ours was. Not a tragedy, not a mistake, just a season, beautiful, impossible, and gone too soon. Still, every time I hear that old Counting Crows song, I roll down the windows, let the wind rush in and drive. Because for a little while, if I close my eyes, I can almost feel it again. The hum of the highway, the warmth of her hand, the sound of her laughter carried off by the tide. And in that moment, it's summer again, and she's still here, and I'm still 21.